Hey y'all, I'm Paige Feldman, and on this week's episode of Cake Fight Presents the Making of, I'm going to hopefully demystify the concept of the note behind the note for you by taking you through my own process for discovering the note behind a note that 4 different people gave me on this latest draft of my script. And I'm going to do it all for you through the magic of screen share. And yes, I'm showing before and after, actually in my script, what I had before and how I rewrote it and how I got there. So stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this, especially if you've ever wondered, what the heck, how do you even find the note behind the note? Hey y'all, I'm Paige Feldman. I'm a writer and director, and here on this YouTube channel, I'm documenting the making of my debut feature as a writer-director. It's called Back to You, and it's a contained romantic comedy, and I am so excited to announce that I have finally finished the most recent draft that I've been working on. The rewrite is done, and I'm gonna tell you all about it next week. Because even though the rewrite's done, all of my edits are on paper. And that means I still have to type them into the document. And with a day job, I mean, even without a day job, it's gonna take a few hours, but with a day job, it's gonna take a couple of days. And I just don't have the time to type it in and give you a full, good, like accurate breakdown of everything that's changed. So that's gonna be next week's video. This week, I wanna take you through a specific piece of the rewrite that gave me a lot of trouble and that I hung up on because 4 different people gave me the same note about this part. They all said pages 80 to 90, but it's actually pages 80 through 92, so about 12 and a half pages when all said and done. 4 different readers, separately, individually, independently, said, nothing's happening here, I think you can cut those pages. Now, there is I don't know if it's an adage or some wisdom or a saying, there's a thing. A thing in writing where if one person gives you a note, consider it, take it or leave it, depending on what your intentions are. If 2 people give you a note, if 3 people give you a note, if more than one person gives you the same note, that means that you have a problem in that area. Now, it might not be the problem that they're all telling you. It might not be the cut these pages, please problem that I've been having, apparently, but there is something to look at. And so I knew going into this rewrite, I would have to do a really close reading of those 12 and a half pages and determine what should stay and what should go. And I was honestly going to be reading them with an eye to just saying, you know what, they're right. I can do this all in about a page and cut these 12 and a half pages down to 11 and a half, and that'll get me that much closer to my goal page count of 100 to 105 for this script. It would get me there because I'm at 116 on my previous draft. So I went in kind of gung-ho, ready to cut. And I realized that those pages are, at least partially, necessary for the script. The reason is that I have on one end of that, on the front end, is the Havdalah scene, which is the scene where Ash and Mitch, and Havdalah doesn't mean copulate, but it's the separation between Shabbat, the Sabbath, and the rest of the week. It's a Jewish ceremony. They do the ceremony and then they have sex for the first time since they were 18. They consummate their relationship and all the attraction that's been bubbling up in them. On the other end of these 12 and a half pages is the breakup scene. So Mitch and Ash, our leads, would be going, if I just cut these scenes completely, from id to id. From sex to anger. Now, jumping from id to id might work if I was writing a script about people who were in their teens or even their 20s. But my characters are in their 30s, and I really like that sweet spot because it's about how even as you mature, as you supposedly become older and wiser, you still have to deal with all of these complex, tumultuous emotions that are love. And that is attraction and relationships and all of this stuff. And that even as you age, you don't have everything figured out. You don't have anything figured out. But that manifests very differently in your 30s than it did in your teens or even your 20s, especially like early 20s, like college and right out of. So many stories about just analyzing every little text message, every emoji, everything. So much. And in your 30s, there is some of that, but it's quieter, it's slower. It creeps up on you a little bit. And cutting those 12 and a half pages completely would lose that creep, that slow burn, and also the slow build of tension that I'm aiming to have between this consummation of their relationship and the explosion, so that you feel it coming, despite everything being all sunshine and roses. So I had my intention there. But as I reread those pages, once I got into it in the rewrite, I realized that while my intention was good, the words on the page did not match it. It was all very sunshine and roses. It was the raindrops falling on my head from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, that set of scenes where everyone's riding on a bicycle smiling and laughing, for 12 and a half pages. That's too much. That song is not that long. I don't know how long the song is. I'll probably just like put it down there so you know. Regardless, that montage is much shorter than 12 and a half minutes, and it works. And so what I need to do is look through my 12 and a half pages to find what's working, what's not, and where I can put that dread and uncertainty so that it seeds, so that on the other end of this small idyllic bike ride, we have all of the angst and anger coming out, and it feels almost like a relief, like a release, like, oh, I knew that was coming. Okay, it's done, it's over, like, let's see what happens next. So I read, and I realized that the most happy idyllic stuff really is a repeat, and that my people who are reading, my readers, they were 100% correct. I could cut 3 pages pretty much right away with barely any changes, and I could also like tweak some of the dialogue leading up to that stuff that I was gonna keep to show a little bit more uncertainty, a little bit like everyone was kind of on a balance beam above a pit of crocodiles. So that's what I did. And then I got to a set of 2 scenes that I thought were really important, because a lot of the time before this, Mitch is helping Ash, is giving him advice, is leading him to grow. And these scenes are Ash leading Mitch to grow and helping her figure her stuff out. We don't get that any other place in the script, and I thought that's really important. But reading that dialogue, it didn't quite feel like a good conversation. There was a little bit of angst, but there was no tension. There was no clash of a viewpoint. It was very amicable, actually, and just kind of blah. And it ends in a sex scene, which is fun and funny, and continues this motif of Mitch accidentally hitting Ash on the face. So I have these scenes that I want to keep in order to preserve Ash's assistance to Mitch in a way that helps even out their relationship and also tempers a bit of the woman exists to help a man grow trope that is, it's just kind of sneaking around in the background in this, which I'm fully aware of, and I hate that trope, but I think that it works. I hope it works. I'll find out when I get more notes, but I want to keep Ash and Mitch on as even footing as possible, as characters, as people, as entities that help each other grow. And then the sex scene, which I think is really great and fun and silly, and I just like it. And I needed to find a way to make this conversation feel more like 2 clashing viewpoints, like contention. Like Ash is over here, Mitch is over there, and they're not meshing yet. They're meshing, but they're not mentally, spiritually meshing. It's more like this, but they don't want to admit it because they kind of like being like that. Anyway, as I'm reading these 2 scenes closely and looking for ways to infuse them with more personality and more worldview, a note one person gave me a while back kind of just fluttered into my mind. Ash is a rocket scientist. I wish I saw more of that. And initially I dismissed that note saying like, that would be cool if you saw him at NASA, but this is a week off, so I don't know what I can give you there. But then I was reading my script and there was one line that stuck out to me and I realized this is the place for it. And this is the place to put Ash's worldview in here, to make this scene more contentious and to make the sex part of the scene that it leans into feel more like a distraction, like, okay, I want to avoid an argument, so let's have sex, as opposed to a cute, funny raindrops keep falling on my head. Sex becomes part of this dread because you know that their relationship is coming to a head and they're ignoring it and they're trying to push it away, but they can't. And what that is, I'm going to show you, and I'm also going to show you my process for how I put this all together. So let's screen share. So here we are in Fade In, and I just want to show you the part of the scene that gave me this idea, and then I'm going to show you my process for the little bit of research, and then I'll show you a little bit of this rewritten exchange. So Ash and Mitch are skinny dipping in the pool, and Ash has just asked Mitch, why are you trying to get a master's degree in education? Because that's one thing that she's thinking about doing, to give up songwriting. If you want to be a songwriter and if you're trying to write this song at this house right here. And Mitch can't be like cute, fun, naked with him. She gets up on the deck, and this is the original draft before I rewrote. The question is, what's so bad about being a teacher? I can't be naked for this. She gets in a towel. Ash, that juicy, huh? Mitch, no, that tragic. Ash, you have your meeting still. And no song. It's like death after terminal illness. Inevitable and sad, and I'll miss it. I'll say goodbye to it and move on with my life. A life that will admittedly be less bright and colorful, but also less chaotic. And Ash says, less chaotic is good? Question mark. Mitch, the negative kind of chaos. And it goes on from there. But the thing that I want to harp on, the thing that I noticed, is Ash is questioning less chaotic is good, as if he likes chaos, which he actually doesn't. However, what this section brought to mind is that chaos is a scientific concept. And I remembered that as I was reading this. There is chaos theory. I'm not 100% sure what it is. I wasn't 100% sure what it was before when I started reading it. I have a general conception of it, but I realized that if someone wants me to incorporate Ash's role as a scientist in the script more, I would like that. I definitely would. And this part needs to be more individual and unique to them, and also their heads need to butt a little bit more. What if instead of Ash having a caring conversation with Mitch, saying, oh, less chaotic is good, what if he dove into chaos theory? What if he used chaos theory to basically give Mitch a reality check? Show his feelings a little bit more. Show that he is falling in love with her, even though he can't say it and he's really uncomfortable with it. What then? I thought, you know what, that could actually be special and cool and fun. So I decided to research chaos theory. That's what I did. I spent an afternoon researching chaos theory, and I'm going to show you. Here is, I Googled chaos in science because I knew chaos theory existed, but I wasn't sure if chaos theory was separate from the idea of chaos in science, and so I wanted to start with the most basic. Turns out, based on the results, chaos in science is chaos theory. So I read a Wikipedia article about chaos theory, and I found some tidbits in there that I thought, oh, that's interesting, like a definition of chaos. And the idea that, the butterfly effect is kind of a chaos theory adjacent theory where you have one element, something, a butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil and causes a hurricane in Texas. The idea that one small change in the environment can have a huge ripple effect across the world. It doesn't necessarily mean that the change is going to be exponentially catastrophic the farther away you extrapolate, but the idea is that everything that is in a non-predictable system, you cannot predict it past a certain point. That's what chaos is scientifically. And so I read a little bit more. I found a few more terms that I could use. I tried reading a scientific paper about chaos theory in celestial bodies, because rocket science and space and astronomy, all of that stuff is Ash's domain, and chaos theory is related to the weather and to how the universe expands. And so this is something that's totally in his domain. I tried to read that paper And it very quickly got into mathematical formulas that I barely understood when I was actually taking calculus in high school. And I compiled everything that I thought would be important or interesting into a Scrivener document, or into a document in my Scrivener notebook for this film. And so I could have it easy to reference, and also included links, because it's much better to be able to go back, and if I needed to read something a little bit more about that certain topic, about a Lyapunov time or something, I could. And so I had all of this stuff. I spent an afternoon reading about it, and as is typical with any writer, doing way too much research before you find the gems that are really going to work for you. And because this rewritten conversation is entirely changing the scene, instead of writing it longhand like I do most of my revisions, I decided to just type it up in a document, and also it makes it easier for me to share with you. So before I show you the new scene, I want to show you kind of how this scene, the original one, goes from less chaotic is good, to just give you an idea of how I'm using this research and using this character specificity and these notes to change the whole tenor of the scene and hopefully add some tension. So Ash says less chaotic is good, and Mitch says the kind of negative chaos, wondering and hoping and wishing, and knowing I had once had lightning in a bottle at a time before I knew how to harness all the electricity. And Ash says you're great at this poetic melancholy. Maybe use some of that. And I just want you to notice, I'm not going to go any further because it's just kind of this boring, Mitch is always leading this conversation. Ash is responding. Ash is passive. And that's not Ash, and it's also bad drama. So this is what Anatomy of a Love Song is, another title I'm using for this because I like Back to You, but I thought of that one also. This is the new scene. Mitch says, and no song. It's like death after terminal illness, inevitable and sad, and I'll miss it. I'll say goodbye to it and move on with my life, a life that will admittedly be less bright and colorful, but also less chaotic. Nash says, not less chaotic. Mitch, absolutely less chaotic. It will be normal, boring, stable, predictable. Ash, that's not how chaos works. Mitch watches, expectant and dubious. Yes, chaos in a colloquial sense is about how everything around you is unstable and unpredictable. But chaos, technically, scientifically, is more than that. It's how your future is determined by your present. Not just by one choice, but all of them. You have a potential of a kaleidoscope of outcomes that can only be predicted by every different step you take, once you take them. And I'm choosing to take the boring one, the one with stability. Stability maybe, but for how long? Life is a deterministic system, not random, but unpredictable. Chaotic no matter what you do, and the master's degree might buy you more stability, might give you a larger Lyapunov time, but a what now? Lyapunov time, the amount of time the chaotic system of your life can be accurately measured. But at some point, something is going to shift, whether it's seconds or a few days, or like space, millions of years. I can't live forever. Your songs could. And it goes on from there. But this scene, I hope you see, I hope it does. I'm not trying to just toot my own horn, but I'm trying to make this better. I hope you see how using this new information and having Ash become the expert here is creating a dynamic where there is some bumping, where Ash is explaining to Mitch something that he is passionate about and doing it to try to get her to see her own brilliance. He's not just like in this version, you're great at this poetic melancholy. Maybe use some of that, just kind of passively agreeing with her. He's saying, but your songs could. He's telling her, you're choosing something you think is stable, but nothing's stable. So why not do the thing that you love? Why aren't you letting yourself shine? So that's where I got, thanks to a note that 4 people gave me, thanks to a note that 1 person gave me, and thanks to myself for reading my script and trusting my own instincts. Because while 4 people told me that those pages needed to get cut, that's not necessarily what needed to happen. I'll find out, again, once I send this script off to be read by most of those readers again. But when they said that those pages needed to be cut because they were boring, what they really meant was, those pages are boring, do something about them. And hopefully I did. Hopefully I created some purpose in these scenes that helps the story move along and not just coast on the handlebars of a bike with a really beautiful song behind it. So that's how I found the note behind the note. I let other people, my trusted readers, point me to the problem area in my script, and then I read those areas and tried to figure out what I could do to make it so they didn't give me that note anymore, but those pages did exist still and did exactly what I needed to. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope you enjoyed seeing the behind the scenes in terms of my thought process and also how I'm editing my script and my own writing itself. I'm really excited to be able to share this with you, and thank you all so much for watching. I'll be back next week with more of Cake Fight Presents The Making Of, this time for sure with a full breakdown of what I did on this rewrite. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.